You're listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network.
You're listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast, the most listened to daily Miami Dolphins podcast on the internet. Come on, Dolphins fans. Time to fins up.
All right, Miami! Miami's got the Dolphins, the greatest football team. We take the ball from goal to goal like no one's ever seen. We're in the air, we're on the ground, we're always in control. Hey, when you say Miami, you're talking Super Bowl. 'Cause we're the Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins number one. Miami Dolphins.
Good evening, Miami Dolphins fans. How are you today? And thank you for listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast. Late on this Thursday evening, April the 25th, we are minutes away from being Friday, April 26th. Round one of the NFL draft is over. The Miami Dolphins selected Chop Robinson, edge rusher from Penn State in round one, and we're here to break it down for you all. I am joined, as always, by Tom Ernest. He's from right here at DolphinsTalk.com. Tom, how you doing tonight?
I'm tired because this draft drags out on opening night, but I will say I was a bit surprised on how this pick actually played out. Now, I guess the surprising part was based on the players that were still on the board, but I think they went this direction because of what happened the pick before, and we'll get into that.
Yeah, we'll break all that down. But as always, here at the top, a big shout out to everyone listening at finheaven.com. Everyone go to finheaven.com, the largest Miami Dolphins message board on the internet. Also, a shout out to our friends at the I Am a Miami Dolphins Fan Facebook page run by the great and talented Carlos Hernandez. If you're on Facebook, please be sure you are part of the I Am a Miami Dolphins Fan Facebook page. And wherever you're listening to this podcast, whether it's Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, Podbean, Podchaser, Audible, hit subscribe to the podcast network. You don't want to miss an episode. We're going to have a show again tomorrow night. We'll have a show again against Saturday night after more picks are made by the Dolphins. And I know after the draft, the offseason gets a little slow. We're going to have you covered with news, rumors, other signings, forecasting. We got the schedule show. We will have you covered. You don't want to miss an episode. Subscribe. And to all the people, and we had over like 5,000 people who joined us on the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel Thursday evening with, Tom was there, I was there, Stephen D, Jason Sarney were there, Josh, Aaron, Ian Berger, who were with us all night through all around one of the draft. Thank you so much for anyone who sent in a little bit of money and a donation. Really thank you. That is much appreciated. So thank you for everyone. And guess what? Friday night, we're going to be back on YouTube to do it all over again. And you can see live instant reactions when the Dolphins make their pick at 55 or if they trade back a little bit later. Okay. Chop Robinson. Tom, let me start here. I think the top of this draft got a little crazy. In that, Michael Penix went, Nix went in the top 12. All these, it took to what? Pick like 18, something like, pick 19 or so for the first defensive player to just come off the board pretty much, whatever the number was, I forget right now. And I think a lot of fans of Dolphins are like, oh, great, someone like a Murphy. No, it was pick number 15, I think. It was like someone like a Murphy's going to fall to us, or Jared Verse, or Turner, who no fans of Dolphins thought they would have had a chance to have. But then in the end, those guys sort of all went right in a row, including the offensive lineman from Washington, one pick before Miami. And the Dolphins are sitting there going, what do we need? Now, what have we said for a while? Chris Grier likes premium position guys. And I've been saying for weeks, if you think Chris Grier is going to take a guard or a center in round one, you're just either A, you're not paying attention, or B, you're trying to talk yourself into something that's never going to happen. And Graham Barton's there. Jackson Powers Johnson's there, and guess what? He didn't take an offense. He ain't taking a guard in round one, and Graham Barton went, but Jackson Powers Johnson, as I said, he's a center who has some snapping issues. Those guys are not going to go in round one, and he could be there at pick 55 for Miami, which then go for it, I guess. But Chop Robinson is a premium position edge rusher. The top three edge rushers are off the board. Miami, before the pick, had one healthy edge rusher, Tom. One, Shaq Barrett. Jaylen Phillips says he wants to come back week 1. I'm sure he does want to. Is that realistic? I don't know. You might be looking more like the first week of October for him in reality. Bradley Chubb, you might be looking late October, first part of November, maybe. And even if those guys return, there's a difference between returning to the field and returning to the peak performance they were before injury. They might return to the field, but they might not be what they were last year. You might have to wait to 2025 to see that. Yeah. So I get the Chop Robinson pick. Look, he's not a finished product. It's a work. Everyone, if you watch the ESPN coverage, ABC coverage, you all said the same thing, that he's got the speed coming around the edge for sure. He's got to work on a second and third move to get to the quarterback, because what he did at Penn State won't necessarily work in the NFL. But a lot of these guys got to work on that. It's the draft. Yeah. You're taking 20-something-year-old kids who aren't polished product, aren't finished project. I can't speak tonight. I've been on too long. You know what I mean. Yeah. They need work, time to develop. And I'm okay with it. It's a position of need. They needed the help on defense. They lost Andrew Van Ginkel. They lost Christian Wilkins. They lost Xavier Howard. They lost Jerome Baker. They lost Elliott and Jones. And, they signed Jordan Brooks, who's a nice player. Kendall Fuller, who's a run-of-the-mill NFL cornerback. They signed Shaq Barrett, who's going to be 32 in the middle of the season. And they signed Jordan Porter, who turned 33 today. They signed some old men. And up front, they signed 6 linemen on one-year deals for less than $2 million, half of which, or more than half, won't make the roster. Defense up front was needed. Pass rush was needed. You're looking big picture a couple years from now. Jaylen Phillips, Chop Robinson is your primary pass rushers. Long-term, short-term, Chop Robinson can hopefully contribute right away in the pass rush time.
Yeah, I get it. I think actually when we did our first back and forth mock a few weeks ago,
to me. Yeah,
I mentioned Chop Robinson at 21. Going into tonight, I thought that was not even a potential unless they traded back, but they pulled the trigger. And we've talked about it ad nauseum on multiple shows. Chris Grier only goes after premium positions in the first round. So an offensive guard, not a priority pick. Yes, it's a priority because you want to try to fix the offensive line and some of the issues they've had, but that's not who you're taking at pick 21 in the NFL draft. You're taking offensive tackles. You are taking edge rushers. You're taking quarterbacks, which obviously tonight was really, really stunning to watch. But you're also taking corners. So you took a premium position player. You took a guy in Chop Robinson. Now, Chop Robinson, from an athletic standpoint, has been compared athletically to Micah Parsons and Myles Garrett. That's a hell of a comparison.
Pretty good.
Yes. So, PFF had him percentile-wise, pass rush grade 98%, pass rush grade on true pass rushes 91st percentile, pass rush grade without play action 100th percentile, pass rush win rate 96th percentile, run defense, that's where his problems lie, is he's not very good at setting the edge. But you are getting a guy that is extremely athletic. You're getting a guy that can get after the quarterback. Is he a finished product? Absolutely not. He's not a finished product. I thought Jaylen Phillips in 2021 was more of a polished product versus a polished project. Chop Robinson is going to get thrown into the fire early in the season. That is not up for debate. He is going to be on the football field day one, and they need him to produce day one. Also can't hate the fact that he ran a 4.48, so a sub 4.5 40-yard dash. That man flew at the combine. You need that in a division where you are playing a guy who terrorizes you with his legs and Josh Allen. So would I have loved Troy Fontenot? 100%. I would have taken him because you can play tackle, but he wasn't there. The Steelers made the right call because they needed offensive tackle help on the left side. So I think that's where he's going to slot in. But I was chomping at the bit. Like you said, Mike, Dallas Turner falling down the draft board. Jared Verse falling down the draft board. You had elite players falling because teams over drafted quarterbacks based on the pundits that you're watching on national television. But I think the Dolphins are going to get a good football player here. We'll see how good he is going to be. Per NFL.com, Lance Zierlein in his projection has him as a boom or bust potential, which is giving some Dolphins fans maybe some Deion Jordan vibes back from the draft in 2013. Some are saying Aaron Maben, but it's going to depend on what Anthony Weaver can do with this kid. He is athletic as all hell. He is going to be able to get after the quarterback. Can they refine him? Can they get him all the tools he needs to be a 3-down NFL player is going to be the question, and things that we're going to be seeing throughout the summer. Can he convert and be better at the things that he was not very strong at Penn State while adding to his repertoire of being an elite pass rusher? We'll find out.
Yeah, and here's a couple things that I want to touch on. You know, I see on social media, which I know social media, it is what it is, and they could have picked the second coming of Jim Brown and people would have been mad at the pick. They could have picked the second coming of Lawrence Taylor. People would have been. People are just going to be mad at anything on social media. It's just what social media has sort of crumbled to these days. Before this pick was made, Miami had one healthy pass rusher on the roster, and he's on the wrong side of 30. And here's the deal, folks. They might take a second edge rusher tomorrow night in round 2. And if they don't, then on Saturday, when they get picks around 5, 6, and 7, they're going to take more. They have no edge rushers. The Phillips and Chubb thing, we hope they might come back sooner than. They cannot plan on hope. They literally, if they need edge rushers in the worst way. And the comparisons to Deion Jordan, folks, look, I get the frustration as a Dolphins fan. It's been 24 years and stuff. Some things you got to get over. That was over a decade ago with a different general manager. I mean, get over it at some point. Real Deion Jordan. That's over 10 years ago with Jeff Ireland, and we traded up to get him. We just sat here at 21, the back half of round 1, and took a kid. And then I got people going, "Was Charles Harris?" I mean, what? We should never draft an edge rush. Like when we drafted Jaylen Phillips, was anyone saying, Charles Harris or Deion Jordan? Because, I mean, it's just because you've missed on other players at certain positions doesn't mean you stop, especially when it's a glaring need, especially when it's a premium position. So, I mean, the one for Jordan, it's like, really, folks, get over it. You got to move on at some point. Charles Harris one's more recent. I kind of understand that. But, like, he was never drafted a guard in round 1. And if he drafted a wide receiver, all I saw on social media, for the most part, outside of Utah, where people going, they can't draft a wide receiver. They got a million other needs. So he didn't draft a wide receiver. He didn't draft a guard or center. Like, what's left? Johnny Newton? Okay, but guess what? I don't even think he went round 1 tonight. Unless I missed it. He did not go, maybe get him tomorrow night. I don't know. But it's like, it's not a bad pick. And I understand Dolphins fans have been wounded. They've been burned. They're frustrated. It's been 24 years without a playoff. And I think it really comes down to, Tom, fans of the Dolphins want every pick to be an offensive lineman, and that's just not realistic. It's just not realistic for the reasons, number 1, guard centers in rounds 1. Yeah, other teams might take him. Chris Grier's not. So since he's in control, he ain't taking him. That's number 1. Number 2, we're about to pay Tua. Whether you like him or not, whether you agree with it or not, they're about to pay Tua. How much they pay him, I don't know. It's going to be a lot. And he's going to take up a significant part of your salary cap. Yeah. When we're in that world, which we will be in the next month or 2, you have to fill out a roster, the entire roster, every other position on the roster equally. You cannot put too much draft capital with early round draft picks or money through free agency into one position and ignore the rest of the roster. Look at this roster. We got 2 wide receivers. They're great wide receivers. They're awesome wide receivers. We got nobody behind them. We got 2 starting safeties in the final year of their deals. They're pretty good. We got nobody behind them. Like I said, prior to this pick, we had 1 edge rusher, and we got Zach Sealer on defensive line. Now, what have we done on the offensive line? Now, I'm not saying all these moves have worked. I get it. We took Austin Jackson in round 1. We took Robert Hunt at the start of round 1. We traded the at the top of round 2. We traded a 3rd-round pick to move up to the top of round 2 for Liam Eichenberg. We paid Armstead. We paid Aaron Brewer. We paid Connor Williams. And I know all these moves haven't worked out perfectly, but at some point, you're throwing good money after bad at one position and literally ignoring the rest of the team. You cannot win that way. If they would have, people, I think, expected, Tom, to take an offensive lineman in round 1, an offensive lineman in round 2, and it's going to be peaches and rainbows. Yeah. Who's your defensive tackle? You're going to start off the year with Jonathan Harris and Tier Tart? And who's your edge rusher outside of Shaq Barrett? You ain't got one. And look at who's available to sign now or post June 1st. There's nobody to sign on the defensive line or edge rushers now, unless you're bringing back guys like Charles Harris and Agba, which ain't happening. So they had to address a front 7 player on defense in round 1. But if you want to sign an offensive guard, a Risner and some other guys who have starting experience, they're still out there. Yeah. And we saw the Miami Herald report that they've talked to 3, 2 of which full-time starters, 1 of which a part-time starter, and they're pretty much telling them, look, if you get a deal, go ahead and sign it. But if you can sit tight post June 1st, we got $18 million coming off the books. We want you. So if you're going to sign one of those guys, you already got Brewer, you already got Jackson, you already got Keon Smith, you already got Robert Jones, you already got Jack Driscoll, you already got Lamb, you already got Armstead. And now how many offensive linemen are going to carry? 20? You only carry 8 or 9. And I just hit 8 or 9. We haven't signed a vet yet. They're not. I think if you're just expecting offensive linemen no matter what, you're just missing the forest from the trees, I think, Tom. And people have to understand the rest of the roster, especially defense, it's a mess. They need to add to it, and that's what they did tonight with Chop Robinson.
Well, before I get into maybe a little bit more here, Mike, it was said in Chris Grier's press conference, and I quote, "We were active to get back in for the late 1st round." Dolphins GM Chris Grier said of his attempts to trying to get back into the 1st.
That was a wide receiver.
Since they couldn't get in, the Dolphins, are they going to try to move into the early portions of the 2nd round? Because there is, the last few picks was Ricky Pearsall and Xavier Legette.
Xavier Worthy went a little before that too.
Yep. The Bills traded to the Chiefs again, so Xavier Worthy can rip their hearts out in January.
What did the Bills get in that trade?
They moved up into the early 3rd round, I believe. They moved up 9 spots in the 3rd round, and they picked up like a 4th or 5th or something like that.
All right.
But if you're looking at, this is now a topic. The players that are sitting out there available, and if the Dolphins do want to make a move and get into the early 2nd, Cooper DeJean, Jazar Newton, Kool-Aid McKinstry, they're not drafting a corner.
Don't say that, Tom. Don't say that.
A.D. Mitchell is sitting there. Ladd McConkey is sitting there. Keon Coleman is sitting there.
Sanders, a tight end, who they apparently like.
Tavion Sanders is there, but I think they can hold out hope for him at 55.
Jackson Powers Johnson.
Yeah, Jackson Powers Johnson also, but he's right now on the big board. He is 23rd best available, so his medicals must not have been very good. The fact that he fell out of the 1st round and he's still falling.
I think his medicals and the ones with Newton with this foot. That Newton foot thing might cost him to fall. They might be able to sit at pick 55 and get him if they want him. I don't know. Or he might be off the board with the foot.
So I think the Bills, because they're picking 1st tomorrow night, they're probably going to go A.D. Mitchell, in my opinion. But if the Dolphins really are trying to move up, because there's obviously a player there that they love, to the fact that Chris Grier came out and said, we are trying to get back into the 1st round and couldn't get there. Jazar Newton is probably a target.
I think it's either Newton or a wide receiver that they're trying to get back.
Yeah, I would agree. I
think it's one of those two. Yep. And now if it's Newton, they still got time to work because let's see who's at the top of round 2. Let me look right here. Bills, they're not trading there. Patriots probably won't trade there. You get to Arizona, they've already had 2 picks. They might be open for some more business. Washington might be open for some business.
Yep.
Yeah. Well,
2 picks within the
If they got 2, they're probably not going to trade the top one. They probably would trade the second one, though.
Yep.
Pick 40, you might be able to get 2.
Chargers.
Yeah, I think, and you can pencil in the Chargers for a wide receiver because they took a tackle round 1. I think what we're going to see is the wide receiver run started at the end of round 1. It's going to start round 2 right away. Yep. Now, this is a deep wide receiver class. Pearsall, I would have loved, but you guys like Roman Wilson are out there still. Mitchell from Texas, they're probably going to go right away on night 2. You got the kid Polk is out there. Yep. So I think a lot of those wide receivers are going to go at the top. If that's what he was looking for, here's the deal. Again, and I'm not saying this to get people. I don't think he's going to go offensive guard in round 2. I just don't. I think he's going to sign one of those vets post June 1st. I think tomorrow night there's 3 positions, Tom. 3. It's going to be one of the 3. Wide receiver.
Yep.
Defensive tackle with a Newton or a Jenkins, and maybe you can trade back from 55 down a little bit and get one of them. And the other position, which, don't be shocked, folks, safety. Not once he might be able to get the top safety on the board. And again, if Anthony Weaver's going to run all these wild 3 safety sets, they don't have a third safety. If they're unable to re-sign him and is gone next year, you need someone to fill it for him. Jordan Poyer is probably going to retire after this year. You need someone for him. So it helps you in the short term in the 3 safety sets, helps you in the long term with a safety who will actually be under contract next year when you might lose one or both of the guys you got now. I'm thinking safety, wide receiver, defensive tackle. Look, it could be an offensive lineman. It could, 100%. I just don't think it will be because the guy has said time and time again, you're more worried about this position than we are, and nobody wants to believe him when he says it.
Cue it up, Mike. Cue it up.
I got it, and I'll play it right now. I didn't have it on.
Cue it up.
You guys are probably more worried than we are, in terms of, at the position depth at those spots you talked about.
And here's the other thing, I know you just said, there's no way they'll take a corner. When he had Xavier Howard and Byron Jones, two of the top 5 or 6 corners in the league, he took Noah in round 1. Last year, he had Ramsey and Howard. He took Cam Smith in round 2. And I looked at the contract tonight. Jaylen Ramsey, again, I'm not saying this is going to happen. I'm not saying it. I'm saying post-June 1st cut next year would be pretty much like the Xavier Howard deal this year. You say you'd have to eat some dead money, like $8 or $9 million, I think it is roughly. But I think it opens up like $19 million post-June 1st. I'm not saying they will do that. I'm not sure I would do it. But if he's thinking, I need cap space to pay Phillips, Waddle, Holland, and Tua, and I know I got to pay Tua now. I have to pay Holland before the other 2, but I need cap space and I need money to do those moves. You draft a corner now, then you're going to, big picture beyond this year. You got Cam Smith, whoever you take in round 2, and Kader Kohu at 3 cheap, reasonable contracts that hopefully you can coach those guys up to be suitable enough. So I wouldn't take a corner. I would take a safety over a corner, but don't also say he won't do it. Because every time someone says Chris Grier, he can't do that, he ends up doing something pretty similar to that. So that's something just to keep in mind.
Listen, if that's a direction they want to go because they do need some safety help, then you're going up for Cooper DeJean because he's a guy that he's a kind of a Swiss Army knife, kind of what you thought you were going to get in a Brian Flores defense with Mika Fitzpatrick, a guy that can play inside and also a guy that can line up at safety. They're going to run 3 safety look, most likely with Anthony Weaver's scheme that he's probably carrying over from Baltimore. So you need help. Jordan Poyer is going to be a guy that's going to provide you probably a solid 16, maybe 16, 17 games this year. He's solid, but he's 33. He's just on the wrong side of 30. You have Holland. We know he's a very good football player. You need someone else there. You need some depth there, and a guy that can play multiple positions. And that's a guy that, like Cooper DeJean, and that could be the guy they might be trying to move up to get. Maybe that is their plan. Maybe they have, like you said, maybe they have an idea that they're going to sign one of these veteran offensive guards based on the report that came out a couple weeks ago. There's potential that they're going to sign Odell Beckham Jr. still.
That would take wide receiver maybe off the board this year.
Take wide receiver off the board as well. So maybe that's why they go that direction and pick one with Chop Robinson. Again, wasn't my first choice for a pick for them, but we'll see.
Who was on the board at the time? What were you going to do? It's either him or Newton.
Yeah, it was him or Newton. But
Or take the other Robinson.
I was saying trade back. I was screaming.
Yeah,
trade
but you
back.
have a partner who wants to trade up.
Yeah. You had to have a partner to do that.
You have a partner. I mean, you just can't trade back. I mean, someone had to want to come up, and apparently nobody did. And here's the other thing. Here's a commenter chat I want to it's a good topic starter. Our offense choked against good teams last year, but we kept building up the defense. Our defense was ripped apart this offseason. We lost Wilkins. We lost Raekwon. We lost Baker. We lost Andrew Van Ginkel. We lost Xavier Howard. We lost Elliott. We lost Brandon Jones. And we signed a 33-year-old safety, a 32-year-old edge rusher, and Jordan Brooks. We signed a bunch of scrubs on the defensive line for less than $2 million, half of which won't make the team, and the other half won't even start. We have nothing on defense, and there's nobody left to sign. You're not, as I said, you're not bringing back Agba. You're not going to sign Carl Lawson. I mean, they might sign Carl Lawson, but I mean, he's shot as a player. There's nothing left in the tank there. There's nobody left to sign. There's players on offense you can sign. You can sign Odell Beckham for a year. He'll be fine. You can sign a Risner or another guard. He'll be fine. Defense, the cupboard is bare in free agent. There's nobody left to sign. You'll get $18 million with nobody to spend it on, or you're going to spend it on the Eli Apples of the world, and then you'll be all mad for the next 9 months. Can't believe we're going to watch him play. Well, this is why you do it. It's roster construction. I got free agencies on offense, guys that can sign. And if I want to, and here's the deal. No rookie offensive lineman is going to help you beat good teams, is going to take your offense over the top. No right guard or left guard is going to help the offense get over the hump when they play Kansas City or the Ravens. That's a myth, okay? We're talking about a guard position because we got a center, we got 2 tackles, and we got 2 starting wide receivers, a tight end, and a bunch of running backs. People are mad that they didn't take a guard. And if you think the guard is going to help you beat Kansas City and the Ravens, good luck with that thought process. The thought process is we need youth on defense, we need bodies on defense, and that's what they did. So we'll see. I think the safety, someone says there's a lot of safeties on the market. Sure, if they don't get a safety, in round 2, maybe they take one later rounds, and they probably do sign a safety. But up front, the front 7 was ravaged. Everyone's gone. People don't like. Zach Sealer's not going to get blocked the same way next year like it was blocked last year. If you expect Zach Sealer to be all the attention that went to Wilkins is going to go to him. They're going to double team him. They're going to put multiple guys on him. The defense, there's nothing up front. And until Chubb and Phillips get back, that might be half the season, folks. What are you going to do? You can't take off the first 8 weeks and then say, "Oh, we'll flip the switch November 1st." It's not how this league works. So they need defense. The defense was ripped apart, and they're trying to build it back up as best they can. The fixes on offense are really minor. You're talking like right guard, third wide receiver. I mean, minor compared to what they need on defense. It really is.
Yeah, I'm intrigued. I'm going to be watching tomorrow. Buffalo's not trading again, so they're going to take.
They got to get a wide receiver here.
They got to take a wide receiver there. A.D. Mitchell most likely will be the pick to start tomorrow. And then it's really the next couple picks. The Patriots may be less inclined to trade with the Dolphins. Like you said, Arizona is a spot. Washington is a spot. If the Dolphins are truly trying to trade up into the early part now of the second round.
Green Bay is a spot because they've done a lot of deals with the Packers in the past. Keep an eye on them. Yep. Atlanta's
which is the Jets pick, which is the 10th pick in this round and the next round because of the Jets.
Jets don't have a pick, and then it's
right, but that's because it's with the Packers.
Yeah. So, and here's the deal. I was less against trading back in round 1 just because I think a really good player is going to fall in their lap. I don't know if Chop Robinson falls in the really good player, but I think he's a good player who fell in their lap. Round 2, I'm very open to trading back. If you can go from 55 to 60, and you can get another pick in round 3 or 4, you're still going to get a wide receiver or a safety or guard or a tackle. If you slide back a couple spots, you go from say 55 to 58 or 59 or 61. I really think that round 2, again, round 1's more important because it fits your option. You want to get someone at a position that has very high salaries like edge rusher. You can control them in the 5th year to make sure you control the salary there. There's a lot more in play. Round 2, each round that goes by, the risk level comes down a little bit. So, you can be a little bit more flexible here. And I'm all for that if that happens in round 2. If they want to trade back round 2 to get a pick in round 3 or 4, I think that'd be great. But if he was looking to trade back up into round 1, that tells me there was somebody he was after. And if that person wasn't picked, for all we know, and maybe he wasn't, he's still going to be looking to trade up. And again, what they have to trade next year, if they got 2 comp picks in round 3, they can't trade them, but they could trade a pick in round 2 or 3 next year to entice a team. Because if you're Miami, say you trade a pick in round 2 next year, you give up your second, you give up 55 and a pick in round 2, and you move up to whatever pick. You still have a pick in round 1 and 3 picks in round 3. Still pretty good. 4 picks in the first 3 rounds, still pretty freaking good.
Yeah. They've got something to draft picks to play with if they want to move up. Again, I think it's just going to depend how the Patriots pick goes. Arizona, and then of course, Arizona and Washington are fair game. I can definitely see the Patriots going wide receiver.
Yeah, they need weapons for the young kid. If you draft a quarterback, you better help him.
Yep, and Arizona already took a wide receiver, so and I don't think the Dolphins would move up for a wide receiver. To me, it's Newton or it's Cooper DeJean are the 2 guys. Those are the 2 guys you would trade up for. If they don't make the move up, then I agree with you. Make a trade back if you got a willing participant. Pick up a mid-round pick, 3rd or 4th, in this year's draft, and get young, cheaper talent that you can have, because that is what the Dolphins truly need to backfill this roster is talented players that are on their first contracts that is not going to break the bank, because the Dolphins have been breaking the bank, and they're going to continue to break the bank here in the next year with these contracts that are coming due for obviously Tua, Jaylen Waddle, Jalen Phillips, and of course, Javon Holland. So there is a lot of money that's got to get passed around here by Stephen Ross and Chris Grier. The Dolphins have to get cheaper at premium position.
You can't pay Tua. You can't pay Tua all this money and have him eat up a big chunk of your cap and think you're just going to be able to go out there and just buy players like we have been. You gotta use your draft capital and spread it around to other positions. And that means you can't just keep throwing every pick at the offensive line. First off, if he's used all this money in free agency and all these picks and he still hasn't fixed it, why you keep throwing bad money after good? At a certain point, you got to be like, this ain't working. We got to, everyone says Butch Barry was a savior. Okay, let him save some of these people. Coach them up for another year. Get them better. I mean, that's his job. And that's what a lot of this is. And, I love Cap. Cap's one of our best listeners, followers. I'm going to push back on him here when he says, no one had this guy on their big board. Peter Schrager had him mocked to Miami today. He put up Peter Schrager. And by the way, he was the guy who told everyone 6 quarterbacks first part of round 1. Guess what? 6 quarterbacks in the top 12. Then he mocks Chop Robinson to Miami. And so don't say, if you never heard of his name, I don't know how much draft prep you did. Everyone knew Chop Robinson, 4th best edge rusher on the board, was going to go between 20 and 32. He was the 4th best edge rusher on the board and went between 20 and 32. That was all we heard this entire draft process, and that's what happened in reality. And I love you, Cap, but I got to push back at times.
Yeah. Well, the next one, you can't pay Tua if you don't protect him either. Well, Tua gets the ball out quicker than everybody else.
Did we just pay Austin Jackson?
Do
we pay Armstead?
I think Brewer? Did Cap come in late, Mike? Do you need to replay the video for him?
No, I'm not going to replay it. But it's like we paid Aaron Brewer.
Yeah.
We paid Armstead. We paid Austin Jackson.
Yep.
Those are 3.
You brought back Isaiah Wynn.
Like, at what point, what, do we need 5 first-round picks on the offensive line? It's not realistic. Do we need 5 high-priced offensive linemen? It's not realistic, folks. That's not how this league works. Because if you do that, then what happens? Like, what, you're just not going to have an edge rush this year? Like, when you start the season, you only have 2 safeties? And then if something happens to one of them, say Holland, 2 sprained MCLs, what, he missed like 6 weeks last year or something like that? What, you're going to just go, we got Elijah Campbell, sorry, best we can do because we signed a guard or we used a first-round pick on a guard. You got to get guys in later rounds. You got to coach up players. You need undrafted free agents. You got to be able to fill some spots with not first or second round picks. Like, the offensive line is important. Nobody's saying it's not. But how much more capital can we throw into it? At a certain point, it's like, we made these decisions, and you got to live and die by them at some point. And that's what they're doing.
Yeah, is this pick going to work out in the Dolphins' favor? Maybe. Is it going to blow up in their face? Maybe. We don't know. Chop, like we said at the top, Chop Robinson's not a finished product. It is up to Anthony Weaver and the coaches to get the most and the best version of Chop Robinson. We know he has, no pun, the chops as a pass rusher. He's shown it. And don't just look at sack totals. And we talk about this at length a lot during the season and in the offseason. Sacks is not the be-all, end-all on what makes a successful edge rusher. It is how disruptive are you? Yes, sacks is the bonus because you get fully disruptive because your corners and your coverage is fantastic on that particular play where you're able to have the quarterback hold the ball longer. It's how fast can you get to the quarterback to disrupt it before it becomes anything for the corners. So for me, he has that game. He needs to be better at run defense, and he has to be more polished in his technique to be able to get to the quarterback more efficiently. But when he gets to the quarterback, he gets there fast. So he's not a finished product. And Mike said earlier, don't compare him to the Deion Jordan pick. Don't compare him to the Charles Harris pick.
It's not fair.
It's not fair to Chop Robinson. Let's see what Chop brings to the table. If it was me, I said Graham Barton at that time or Brian Thomas Jr. because I'm all about wide receivers. I'm all about the offense still staying number one. And, you got to forward think at that position. But knowing Chris Grier and how he's drafting, he's taken premier positions. Chop Robinson is it is a good pick. How good is it going to be is what we're going to find out over the next 4 years.
Yeah, they got to coach him up, and they got to put him in the right position to succeed. That's why we pay Anthony Weaver. That's why we pay a defensive line coach. That's why we pay all these people. Coach up the player, get him a second or third sack move. If you want to see the clip on the ABC coverage tonight, Nick Saban was there, and he spoke about how Chop's got an amazing first step and speed around the edge. In the NFL, though, he's going to have to come up with a second or third move and translate that speed also into power. So, because if you just try to go around the edge every time, these offensive linemen are too good, just put an arm out and sort of push you out. You need to have a little bit of strength to swim inside and do other things to get to the quarterback. And he said they'll coach him up. That's their job. Look, folks, Latu, Verse, Turner, they got to be coached up too. All these guys, and it's like if we didn't take Chop, I'm again, I see a lot of fans in our chat on social media upset. Like, would you, Tyler Guyton or Jordan Morgan would have made you happy? Again, nice players. God bless them. Like, who else what pick would have made you happy? Would have made you happy? If they took a corner, you would have, not you. I mean, people would have went nuts and lost their, what. If they took a wide receiver, some people would have said they would have lost their, what. So you're really pounding the table for Graham Barton, Jordan Morgan, or Tyler Guyton. Yeah. That's what and again, those offensive linemen, great. Maybe for a year they can play guard, but they're just as raw at offensive line as maybe Chop Robinson is at edge rusher. So they're all going to need work. I like the pick. And trust me, Tom, you know me long enough. If I didn't like the pick, I tell you I didn't like the pick. I don't sugarcoat nothing. I would have told you I don't like the pick. And if they took Barton, I would have told you I didn't like the pick. If they took Worthy, I would have told you I didn't like the pick. If they took Jackson Powers Johnson, I would have told you I didn't like the pick. Chop Robinson, I like. And here's the other thing, which I said on the live feed. Dante Calinelli, who's very good at this stuff. He does it for a living, breaking down all draft prospects. He's been keeping with us the past 4 or 5 years. He said something on the show this week on Tuesday night when we were talking about edge. He goes, if you look historically at edge rushers the past 10, 15 years or so, at all these positions, there's tiers. You got your top tier, your second tier, third tier. Edge rusher is the one position where after the top tier, the production falls off a cliff. So what's the top tier this year? You had your top three in Chop. Were like the 4 players in the top tier. You had Latu, Verse, Turner, Chop, in whatever order you had them in. That was your top tier. Then there's the next tier, guys who are going to go tomorrow night. And he said, if they don't take one of those 4 edge rushers, it makes no sense to take one in rounds 2 if they trade back round 3, whatever, because the production level falls off a cliff and you're drafting truly developmental guys. If you go back and look at the drafts of 2023, 2022, 2021, 2020, 2019, 2018, 2017, yeah, a guy here or there rounds, from that second, third tier creep up and become, but the vast majority, the production falls off a cliff. And in those rounds, like we said, running backs, nice little sweet spot, rounds 2, 3, 4, second tier guys coming right away and play. We saw it last year with Achane. Tight ends, that second tier group, you can get them to come in right away and contribute. Wide receiver, you can get them to come in. Offensive lineman, guards and center, it's a sweet spot, rounds 2, 3, and 4 for them. Get those second tier guys. Edge rusher's not one of those positions. So and we've been reading all week, Dolphins have to come out of this with some edge rushers. Again, they have one healthy one. Well, they got one. I think they're going to take a couple late because they need bodies there until the reinforcements come in. And that's what it is. Again, it's roster construction. It's allocating of resources. It's how you build a roster without throwing all your money and picks into one area and literally ignoring everything else. So that's where we are. I don't know what else is there to say. I think it's a good pick. I think tomorrow, like I said, safety, wide receiver, defensive tackle are probably your top 3 needs. And if the right offensive lineman's there, I'm sure he'll fall. But I think that's what we're looking at. And we'll be back tomorrow night, Friday night, after round 2 ends and round 3 ends. I hope they can trade back and get an extra pick. Or if not, trade up to the top of round 2, get a stud player, and let's call the night, essentially. If that happens, we'll probably be on right away because we know they got nothing left to trade back. So we'll see. But Chop Robinson's the pick, Penn State edge rusher. A lot of debate this offseason about that, and I'm sure people are already entrenched in their caps, but in their camps, but it is what it is at this point. So, folks, thank you for listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast, for joining us here on the YouTube channel. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're listening in audio form, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Podchaser, Audible, hit that subscribe button there too. Wherever you're listening, you don't want to miss an episode. And again, thank you for listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network and all our shows. I know there's a lot of podcast options out there, whether it's true crime, NBA, Major League Baseball, hockey, music, movies, a lot of options. We do appreciate all of you who do take the time each and every day, even when we don't agree sometimes, like my buddy Cap. I still love you, Cap. Thank you for listening to us each and every day. Follow Tom on Twitter at DolphinsTalkTom. Follow myself at DolphinsTalk. We'll talk to you again tomorrow night. And folks, don't forget, we still must put an end to highway profanity.
Fins up.